Richmond some noise. Woo! Napier. Woo! Okay, everybody. Thank you so much. I'd like to welcome everybody here today in Glen Allen. Thank you so much for showing up. And I think about, 10,000 more of you showed up than we had thought. So that's always a good thing. Yay! All right. Showing up is what it's all about. So my name is Patty. I live on the Richmond-Henrico border. I am a lifetime Democrat. The first Democrat I voted for president was Jimmy Carter. And boy, that is a high bar when it comes to what I consider a public servant, which are what politicians should be and should work at being in this country. They serve us. Anyway, I was asked to do this today, and I'm beyond thrilled. I first became aware of Beto, senator, congressman, governor maybe someday, president. And I was struck by the ability that, it appealed to me in a way of what I had grown up with good Democrats who were about the people, who did respond to their constituents, who didn't cancel town halls or forget all about them. And I'm talking about somebody. But anyway, in the 1st District in Richmond. Okay. So I want to welcome our elected officials who are here today. And when I call your name, would you please stand up for a moment? Jessica Schneider. And a personal favorite of mine, Schuyler Van Valkenburg. Skylar. And Priscilla Thompson. And Judy Napier. I'm not saying you guys standing. Don't be too modest. This is important. We like to eyeball you. Are there any elected officials here today who did not sign up that I can introduce and have you stand for a moment? Anybody else? Okay. And we have the royal taster right here. Just to make sure that the water is okay. All right. And now it is my pleasure and my honor to introduce our pastor here today. He comes to us from where he's served 40 years in Mechanicsville. Can you please come to the mic? Because now I'm running out of material.
Thank you, Patty. Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rodney Hunter. I'm the pastor of Wesley Memorial United Methodist Church in the city of Richmond. And thank you. You can go ahead and do it. Okay. And I have been serving some 40 years. It's a pleasure to be here for this great occasion. And it's great to see all of you here. It gives me hope that change is coming. Change is on the way. So happy. So happy. Amen. Nick Ranford, I think, who worked with the congressman's campaign in Texas, talked so much about him and invited me to come and be a part of this today. And I'm happy to be here because I speak as a citizen, as a minister, one who is very angry with what's going on in our nation today. The injustice that's going on, the deportations, It really looks like the 1930 stormtroopers of Germany. That's what. And I'm just happy to see that we have legislators and we have persons who want to come and represent the people. It's about us, the people who will listen to us, to listen to our concerns, and not forget the things that we are going through. Because there's my church, I'm dealing so much with homelessness, and I'm dealing a lot with utility assistance, and I'm just dealing with depression all over the place. So, and this is a systemic problem, and that we have to fix it. It takes all of us working together, all of us. So I know you're afraid to see a minister with a microphone in a crowd. So I'm finished, but I would just like to say that just the parable that when Jesus fed the multitudes and it got dark, it was a lonely place, and the disciples say, what can we do? There's no food and it's late. We don't have enough money to buy food, and it seemed like there was just no way. And then somebody said, well, there are 2 fish and 5 loaves. And he said, that's enough, bring it to me. So today we got Beto work with us. All we need is one person to come to gather the community together. We are here to strategize, organize, participate, and work to make sure what we are seeing today can never happen again. So thank you all so much. And at this time, thank you. And our prayers are with all of us, and surely with you, Congressman O'Rourke. And at this time, he's coming now to... Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. I really appreciate that. Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Thank you all. Thanks for being here. Grateful to Pastor Hunter for his words just now, and also for his work. I was introduced to him by a video that I think was put together by the ACLU, talking about grace and ensuring that people are not defined by the worst mistake that they have made in their lives. All of us have screwed up, probably once or twice, maybe more than that. But all of us want the ability and the power to transcend those mistakes and to contribute our gifts, what we have to offer, why we were placed on the planet in the first place. And I know that so much of that has been the pastor's work, and he's made so many innumerable lives better by that dedication and focus on one another. And whether you're a Republican, an independent, or a Democrat, I think that is something that you can get behind because it is an American value. So thank you, Pastor Hunter, for your work. Thanks to Patty and everyone who helped to organize this, our elected officials, people who took some time out of their Saturday away from, their kids, their lives, their work, their play, their enjoyment, to do something not for a candidate, because I'm not one, not for a political party, because that's not how I want to be defined at this moment, but instead for our country. And that gives me a little bit of hope. In fact, I felt so much better. We might want to turn the volume on this one down a little bit. I felt so much better just coming into this room and seeing all these beautiful faces, feeling all of this wonderful energy, because as the pastor alluded to, right now at this moment, we are tempted to despair. And that despair can lead to maybe giving in or giving up or just saying, the hell with this. I don't think this thing is going to work. I'm going to go back to my life. I have the resources. I have this beautiful, lovely, healthy family. I'm just going to focus on that right now and hope that things take care of themselves. And if they don't, well, so be it. You and I know that we cannot give in to that. We've been holding these town hall meetings all over Texas and increasingly around the country. And we're going to some places that you might find a former Democratic member of Congress in, Austin, Texas, San Antonio, Houston, and Dallas, Philadelphia last night. but we're also in places like Amarillo in the Panhandle of. Got somebody from the Panhandle right now. You know, and I can attest that the Panhandle is so red, you can see it glowing from outer space as you're orbiting the planet. But those are the kind of places that we have to show up, right? And listen to and learn from one another if we are going to get this right. It is not going to be Democrats who pull us out of the hole. It certainly isn't Republicans. Don't hold your breath for them. But it is going to be all of us together as Americans and human beings. So we've got to be everywhere for everyone and bring people together. And there's just power in doing this. If nothing else happens today, this is better than where we were when we began the day this morning. So thank you for coming and being part. I think it's just so important that we continue to work on this faith, because it's almost an article of faith to continue to show up and participate in something that I don't think with a straight face you can still call a democracy. It is something other than or less than, something we can build back up again. I have faith in that, but we are not there right now. And listening to people around the country and never dividing by geography or party affiliation or any other difference by which they want to segregate us at this time of division and polarization and isolation, I am learning so much about what is on people's minds, what they fear, what they hope for, what they're willing to do to make this country better. And I start with this. This seems to be universal no matter where I am today, because we love this country. And we see that this country is in trouble. And so we want to do everything we can to save this country. But importantly, we understand that what we have done thus far has not averted this trouble. And I want us to be honest with one another. What we have done thus far might have contributed to this trouble in the first place. If I just look at 2024, the most recent national election, if I look at my own party as a lifelong Democrat, I would say that we really failed to listen to one another. When folks told us that, food was too expensive in the grocery stores, we said, hold on a second. Inflation is rising much slower here than it is in the rest of the world. We're doing better on a relative basis. And the person who can't afford eggs or bread or make the note on their mortgage says, okay, that may be true, but life is still hard for me. I wish that you would reflect that in what you're saying. People might have said, you know what, I'm all for immigration. We're a country of immigrants, of asylum seekers and refugees. About what's going on at the border, and I wish that you would address that and reflect it and make sure that you bring this in line with what we expect in this country. We said, no, that's just a Republican talking point. You don't need to worry about that stuff right now. Or folks might have said, and look, this is a sensitive issue, but I'm going to say it nonetheless because we have to speak truth to one another. The president, who's done a remarkable job, President Biden, he seems maybe too old to continue in for a second term. He's not really able to communicate what he's been able to accomplish. And I don't know that he has what it takes to win this next election, which you keep telling us is the most important ones in our lifetimes. We said, no. Behind closed doors, he's running circles around all of us. He may be 81 years old, but he's a 50-year-old if I ever saw one. Do you want to trust me or your lying eyes is what the Democratic Party kept saying to people. So we weren't listening. And then we weren't really talking to folks. President Biden had arguably the most successful presidential administration in modern history. He was the first president to successfully invest in the solutions to confront climate change before it is too late. He invested at a level we haven't seen since FDR in the infrastructure of this country. He reduced childhood poverty in states like Texas by nearly half. It was absolutely amazing. But as I just mentioned, he struggled, and so did the administration, in communicating that. Some in swing states, but not everywhere, not in my state, perhaps not in yours. Maybe they took. And then there's this. We've got to be able to do more when we hold positions of power in public trust. All that infrastructure investment, well, it's nice that you got to sign the bill, right? And the press releases and the news stories, but I need to see that difference in my life right away. Has my home, if I live in rural Virginia, been connected to the internet? Have the potholes in my street or highway been filled in yet? Well, we've got to go through this environmental review process. This takes time. There's a bureaucracy involved. There's this excuse, that excuse, and the other. And it makes it really hard. These elected positions of public trust and the change that they want to see in their lives. And the last thing that I think we failed to do was we failed to be with people where they are. In this last election in 2024, we, the Democrats, poured more than $1 billion into just 7 states. There are 43 more that have hundreds of millions of our fellow Americans who would love to be part of the election and the campaign. Consultants and data scientists and pollsters, and everything seemed so focus grouped and tested and approved before it could be sent out. It was almost sterile. We know Kamala Harris. We know Joe Biden. They're beautiful, wonderful, amazing, incredibly intelligent, personable people. But behind this wall of consultants and polling and, same old corporate politics, I don't think that broke through. So because we know that what we've done not only didn't avert the trouble, may have contributed something born not of the science and the commerce of our politics, but out of its common sense and its soul. Now, to be clear, it's not just on Democrats. We face has ever seen. The power and the strength of those who attack this country from within has never been greater. The greatness of America, our Constitution, the rule of law, the very idea of self-government have never been called into greater question. But if we want to overcome these threats, it will not be enough simply to sound the alarm, nor will it be sufficient to only focus on those who are screwing us or screwing up or whose screw-ups brought us here in the first place. And I promise you that we will not find the answer by spending more money, purchasing more media, creating more digital distance from that essential human connection that we see and find and feel here today. If we are serious, and I know we are, about winning the political power necessary to save America, then I challenge you, as I challenge myself, to be able to describe a new and a better America, one worth saving. An America built on the foundation that made us what Lincoln called the last best hope of earth. And he made that comment thanks to our fellow American, our fellow Virginian, who wrote those words at the corner of 7th and Market in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in 1776. This idea that all of us are created equal, and all of us should expect to be treated equally under the law in this country. No one above it, no one below it, no tyrants, no kings, a government of, by, and for the people. But we must also be able to build beyond that, transcend the limitations that have kept us from realizing that hope. Let's listen to our fellow Americans. They don't find that promise fulfilled in their days, in their lives, in their families, and for their kids. And if they don't, and they don't see a future for themselves, they're willing to gamble on something like we saw in 2024. But to realize this, we're going to need something better than what we have right now. I mentioned, I don't know that we're living in a democracy anymore. So I want you to imagine one. I want you to imagine a future for America where it is people, not corporations. It is speech and not money that determine the outcomes of our elections, the policies that we choose to pursue together, and the future that we build for this country and our kids and the generations that follow. I want you to imagine public leaders who are really our public servants, who are accountable to us, who hold town hall meetings just like this and take any question from anyone, no holds barred, all comers welcomed, who no longer can choose their own voters or set themselves up for life in the office that they hold, but instead are freed from the shackles of fealty to donors and even party hierarchy so that they focus on what we need and delivering for the American people. That's a democracy. And when they run for office, I want you to imagine them no longer putting out these god-awful 30-second ads that were produced in an AI factory in Washington, D.C., or bombarding us with, please give me $25 right now, or the world is going to end and the sky is going to fall. But instead, campaigns run on the ground, face to face, person to person, human being to human being, listening, talking, working through our differences so that ultimately we can work together. We can no longer say to the American people that we are about saving our democracy. It is confusing to them. They recognize that there was one person who was able to spend $300 million himself to help Donald Trump get elected. That's not a democracy right now, so we have to show them that we want to build one. And by building one, we get big money out of politics. We overturn Citizens United so that corporations are no longer people, money is no longer speech. We pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act so everybody can vote in this country. We get politicians out of redistricting and we return that power and all the power back to the people. That is a democracy, and that is what we're for. But one of the things that we learned in this last election, and we should have learned it long before, is that you will not have a political democracy if you do not also have an economic one. If folks cannot get what they need from a government of the many, soon enough they're open to getting what they need from a government of the few, or a government even of just one. Now, we expect our fellow Americans to strive, to get ahead, to serve, to sacrifice even. All of us have had to do that in our lives. But we do not expect you to have to struggle just to survive. And that's what so many millions of our fellow Americans are doing right now. So I want you to imagine a future where we guarantee that your take-home pay is enough to live on so you don't have to work a second or a third job just to get by. I want you to imagine a future where when you're sick, you can see a doctor. Before you're sick, you can see a doctor so that you do not get sick in the first place. We guarantee that you have access to fresh and healthy food, clean drinking water, the time and space to exercise and move your body, to spend time with your kids, with your family, with your loved ones. I mean, this is the stuff that makes life worth living. That's an economic future that we can all agree on and believe in. It is giving people what they're asking for, and if we're honest with ourselves, it is what they need and what they're not getting right now. And I want you to remember, we are the wealthiest, the most powerful country in the entirety of human history. We do not lack for the resources to get this done, only the political will to accomplish it. Speaking of our power and the fact that we are the most powerful country on the planet today, I want you to imagine this future. An America that no longer turns its back on its allies and its friends, but instead chooses to work with them on matters great and small. We alone will not be able to defeat the specter of climate change before it's too late. We need the other countries of this planet. The issues and challenges of international migration, we need the other countries of this hemisphere. Nuclear non-proliferation, I sure as hell do not want to get into another war in the Middle East with Iran. What about non-violently, peacefully resolving our differences diplomatically, bringing the nations of the world together if that's what it takes to make sure that we end wars and do not start them. We sow peace and reap prosperity for the people of this world and also for the people of the United States. And imagine us standing on the principles of human rights and self-determination and no longer being complicit in the bombing and starving and slaughtering of children and families in Gaza, innocent civilians who are killed by the tens of thousands with the help of this country. Imagine a future we are not part of that, but instead we use this awesome power to bring the nations of the Middle East together, the nations of the world, if that's what we have to do, to ensure that we can establish a sovereign, independent state for the Palestinian people, guarantee their safety and security, the security of the Israelis, and everyone who lives in that region. It's good not just for them, it is good for the United States, for our people, and our future. And now imagine this. We bring that same logic back home to this country. And you and your loved ones and your neighbors and your fellow Americans no longer have to fear a masked plainclothes federal agent without a warrant or a badge sweeping you off the street, illegally arresting you, detaining you, imprisoning you, deporting you to a country to which you have never been, perhaps sending you to that gulag in El Salvador, out from which you will never come. And we meet that challenge by rededicating ourselves to the Constitution, to the rights and protections contained therein, like due process, which is so sorely missing from this country today. And then back to my fellow Democrats. Listen, I am 52 years old, and for my entire adult life, the Democratic Party has been promising immigration reform. I don't even like to utter the phrase anymore because we have so badly failed to deliver on this promise. We had the White House, the House, and the Senate in 2009. We did some wonderful things with it, but we did not move forward on immigration. We had the White House, and the Senate in 2021. We did some wonderful things with that power, but we did not move forward on immigration. So I want to imagine a future when the Democratic Party once again has control of the levers of government, that we use that to rewrite these laws in our own image, reflecting our own values, legalizing, for example, every dreamer in this country, every dreamer's parent in this country, every hardworking American who's putting food on our table, working jobs that our kids are not willing to take, and make sure that they can contribute even more as U.S. citizens. And for those who want to come here, who just want to join their family, they live in another country right now, or they want to work a job because they can't find one back home and this job is unfilled by an American here, or they're fleeing certain death for themselves or their kids back in the country where they currently live. We want to make sure, and I don't think this is asking too much, that there is a safe, legal, orderly path to come to this country and to do it the right way. We're the United States of America. We can figure this stuff out. And look, you see what's going on. The pastor mentioned it earlier. This is not who we are. These are not our values. These sweeps that we're seeing through cities large and small, sowing fear on purpose, terrorizing people who are innocent literally of any crime. And it's not just immigrants. It's deporting U.S. citizen children, kids who were born in this country, some with stage 4 cancer, deported from America without their medications. I mean, who are we at the end of the day if we stay silent and become complicit in what is happening right now to our fellow human beings? We can all agree that we want to have control of our borders. I live in El Paso, Texas, the largest border community in the Western Hemisphere. With Ciudad Juarez, 2.5 million people. We're raising our kids there. Of course, I want it to be secure. We want to know who's coming into the United States of America. I think we can agree on that. We want to protect one another from violent criminals, whether they were born in Virginia or born in Honduras. It doesn't matter. We just want people to be safe. But I also want you to remember this. Immigrants are not taking anything from any of us. They are contributing far more into this country than they are ever drawing down. They are helping to make this still the greatest country on the planet. My hometown that I just mentioned, it is one of the safest cities in America, not in spite of the fact that it is a city of immigrants, but because it is a city of immigrants. So we forget this at our peril, but I don't really think this is about immigration. Just like I don't think that the attacks on DEI are really about attacks on the idea of diversity or equity or inclusion in this country, just like I don't think the attacks on trans Americans are about denying your ability to be who you want to be. That might be an ancillary side benefit for the MAGA movement right now. But what they're really trying to do, and I want us all to pay attention to this, is they want to divide us and they want to distract us. They don't want us to pay attention to the really important big thing that is happening right now, which is that the Republican Party and Donald Trump and the billionaires who back them up are robbing us absolutely blind. Is that working? That big, beautiful bill, which is transferring trillions of dollars. Trillion is so big, I cannot get my head around that number. And it's not just one of those trillions. It is 4 of those trillions, adding to the deficit in the short term, to the national debt over the long term. So not you and me breathing this air right now, but your kids and grandkids and great-grandkids and great-great-grandkids are going to be paying off the debt for money that we sent to the wealthiest people on the planet, bar none, who live in this country, the 1%. And this is not just a new thing. I mean, Trump did this in his first term, but presidents of both parties have been complicit to a degree over the last 5 decades. $50 trillion of wealth has moved from lower and middle income and working Americans to the very wealthiest in this country. If I were part of that heist, I'd want you to look the other way as well, right? So I want you to imagine this. A future where we no longer have socialism for the rich in America, and instead we make sure that those trillions flow to the people who actually created that wealth in the first place, the folks who work day in and day out in this country. Some in states like mine earning $7.25 an hour. You don't have one $7.25 an hour job. You have 2 or 3. It's the only way that you're going to feed yourself, that you're going to be able to pay rent, that you're going to be able to provide for your kids. It is so wrong, and it is so unnecessary. Imagine using some of those trillions to cure cancer or Alzheimer's or the diseases that our loved ones are dying from right now. Imagine using those trillions to build millions of new homes across this country so that people can actually afford to live with their families, with a roof over their head, because they can't afford to do it right now. Imagine using those trillions to the benefit of everybody in America. Again, we can do this. It is a function of political will, but to get there, we have to lay out that vision. The last piece of it that I want to share with you. Imagine a Democratic Party that actually fights for these things, that doesn't submit, that doesn't roll over, that doesn't bend over, that doesn't tell us the fight is over before it has even begun, but fights each and every single day on every front, in every state, in every county. And so, yes, we would love to see the Democratic Party continue to invest in Northern Virginia. You know, they're going to go where they've always been successful. But how about Central Virginia and Coastal Virginia and Western Virginia? How about the places that have been written off or taken for granted altogether? And instead of those 7 states that the Democratic Party poured $1 billion into and lost every single one of them, how about Mississippi, Alabama, or Texas too, right? If you think about this, whether we want to agree with this or not, whether we like it or not, probably better said, Texas is our future. And it will either be a future of these extreme abortion bans, a state that leads the nation in school shootings, nearly 2 years after the massacre at Uvalde that claimed 19 lives, 19 beautiful children, and 2 teachers. Not a single thing has changed in our state to make it any less likely that any other child meet that same fate. We are the state that is the least insured in the nation, that has refused to expand Medicaid, even though we invented Medicaid in 1965 with LBJ. Either that is our future, or as Texas continues to pick up electoral college votes, which it will after this next census, and there will be no path to the White House for a Democrat unless we win it, we start investing and working and volunteering and meeting and registering those voters right now. But if we wait until 2026, if we wait, God forbid, until 2028, if we wait till that census and the reapportionment, I think it will be too late. We have to work now, which brings me to this. We have the vision, we have the dream, and it must be met with action. Action is the antidote to that despair that tempts us. It is the absolute key to the victory that we seek. And it cannot begin in 2026. If it hasn't already started for you, it has to begin today. In this room, or just outside this room, there are volunteers who will sign you up and take your free hours this coming week to get out there and meet and register the voters who will decide the outcome of this next election in Virginia and ensure that Abigail Spanberger is the next governor of the great Commonwealth of Virginia. And so, let's make sure that we're all doing that work right now. We cannot take anything for granted, any person for granted. Let's get out there. Everyone is important. We talk and listen to each and every one of us. And let us no longer judge or cancel or excommunicate, and instead say, look, if you voted for Donald Trump in this last election, we are glad that you are here today. If you voted for Kamala Harris, the same goes for you. If you did not vote, for whatever reason, even better, we are here to listen and to learn from you, to make sure that you have a reason to cast that ballot in 2025 first, and then in 2026 nationally for these federal races. And now my last thing, and then we're going to turn this microphone over to you. There are some among us who will doubt whether any of this, or certainly all of this, is possible. And perhaps for all of us, there are those moments where we doubt whether any or all of this is possible. And I count myself among you. In these moments of doubt, I just want you to remember where we come from and who we are and what we're made of. I mentioned Thomas Jefferson and the fact that we were just in Philadelphia last night. We are the people, against the longest of odds, who defeated the most powerful empire on planet Earth to secure our independence. And we did so not easily, not conveniently, not sitting on a couch, not in front of our phones. We did it by being willing to lay down our lives, and countless numbers did. It wasn't but 80 years later that we faced another even bigger test, and more than 300,000 from the Union willingly laid down their lives to defeat the Confederacy and to end slavery in America. We are those people. We are the people who in 1944 landed on those beaches in Normandy, once again willing to lay down our lives to defeat fascism half a world away so that we could protect this fragile democracy here at home. And then in the next generation that followed, in the 1960s, we marched, we protested, we stood up. Some lost their lives in the process to secure civil rights and voting rights. And we did that not because it was easy, as JFK reminded us, but because it was hard. Think of the odds that each one of those generations faced and the fact that they persevered and overcame them and triumphed and make us so goddamn proud at this moment. 249 years of history flow into this room at this moment. We are the heirs to all of that struggle, to all of that service, to all of that sacrifice. And what we do with this inheritance, whether in Lincoln's words, we nobly save it or meanly lose it, is going to define us in the eyes of our kids, and it's going to determine what is possible for America. So no pressure. But we cannot be found wanting at this moment of truth. We absolutely must come through. Are you with me? All right. Are we together? All right. Thank you for hearing me out. That is my dream. I now want to hear yours. Cynthia Cano, who is in the green with the mobile mic, is going to take your questions or your suggestions or your ideas. I'm happy to respond to anything you have to say, but I'm also really excited to hear what you're working on, what you think, what your ideas are. I shared mine just now. And then one last thing. Let's give a big shout for our friends who are in the overflow room who weren't able to come in. So on the count of three. Yeah, let's go. 1, 2, 3. Virginia! All right.
All right.
We want to thank the folks in the overflow room, and we're going to get Cynthia out there to ask some questions when we get a chance.
Absolutely. Here's our first question. Go ahead, stand up.
Hi, I'm Rebecca. I'm a federal employee. And I was wondering,
Rebecca, did you hear everyone groan when you said you're a federal employee?
What do you think we should do? I'm actually in advocacy, an independent congressional agency. I work in Richmond. And it's a very hard time for us. And part of me is like, I don't like how things are going. And it's kind of conflicting of, should we stay and try to help people where we can? Or do we try to quit and go another way? And what is your message to federal workers, which is a lot of Virginia?
Yeah. First of all, you need to hear this. We are grateful for your service to this country, especially now. It is not easy. You know, I'm so glad that the pastor opened up this meeting the way he did. he reminded us, I was reminding us just now where we come from as Americans. We have our bright days that I highlighted. We have some really dark chapters. But there are even darker chapters on this planet, if that is possible. And we saw what happened in the 1930s in Germany. You had a constitutional republic, a form of democracy in one of the most advanced places anywhere. I mean, it was like kind of the center of, or one of the centers of Western civilization. And through democratic channels and means and mechanisms, the Nazis were able to be elected into power. Hitler became the chancellor. And in a matter of weeks, they used the same mechanisms of that democracy and republican form of government to dismantle it from within. Now, history does not repeat necessarily, but we know that it rhymes. And we can feel and hear and see the rhymes right now with our own eyes. Abolishing the Department of Education that was mandated and constituted by the United States Congress. It is illegal on its face, and it is illegal by the law. But having a cowed and complicit Congress, as well as a Supreme Court that is the best one that Republican money can buy, has forced us to grapple with the fact that we have a president who's now able to work outside of the law, abolishing USAID and condemning who knows how many children in Africa to certain death. Not probably, not almost. It is happening right now as we speak. Firing, and this is the proposal, 83,000 employees from the Veterans Affairs Administration. Can you imagine, veterans wait too long right now to be able to see a provider for post-traumatic stress disorder or traumatic brain injury or those injuries and wounds that they sustained in service to this country. And now we're going to say, in order to meet that challenge, we're going to fire 83,000 people from the payroll. What is that going to do for the woman or man who put her life, his life, on the line for this country? The watchdogs are being fired. Jerome Powell is about to be sent out. I mean, they even go outside of our government and cancel Stephen Colbert so that you can't get the news on CBS anymore. So I want to support you in whatever you do, but you asked me a direct question. I'll just give you my best advice. If you can find it within yourself to stay and fight, just know that we will all be behind you. There may be a day where you cannot sustain that fight any longer, and we all understand it. No one would judge you for it. You're one of the toughest places a person can be right now. But we have your back. We're with you. Please keep the faith, and please keep fighting on. Thank you. Appreciate it.
To your left, left.
Hi. Thank you so much for coming. My name's Enika, and I'm from Free Union, Virginia. I went to school in Charlottesville. And Free Union's a very rural area, and I'm concerned. The businesses are closing in Free Union. Our general store closed after 94 years during COVID, and there hasn't been a replacement. Our roads are getting worse, and I'm concerned for people my age who don't see a future in our hometowns and have to go to bigger cities. And our hometowns are just becoming a place to live, like a place to sleep at night, not a place to live. And I feel like politicians have forgotten about us, especially when we're in the suburb or the very rural area outside of a very blue suburb, Charlottesville, Virginia. What can I do to reach out to my neighbors who I used to see around town and now don't see as much anymore? And what can we do as a community to make politicians like you interested in us again and invested in us again to make a better future for ourselves and also for our country?
What a great question. Thank you. Something really perverse has happened in our politics when it comes to rural America. And I'm most familiar with Texas, but, I mentioned going to these really red places, very remote, very rural, not easy to get to. So, it's understandable. People don't show up. People don't go there. But we did, right? We didn't get the memo. And we went to every one of the 254 counties of Texas. And what I learned by going to these rural counties is that because Democrats fear to tread, they lost election after election, so they said, you know what? We're just going to focus on Houston and Austin and San Antonio and the big places where all the voters are, and we'll leave the rural communities to their own devices. Well, Democrats stopped showing up, and Republicans who were winning the elections, they no longer had to show up either because they didn't have a competitor on the ballot in November. So no town halls, no campaigns. Once you're elected for life unless you're defeated in the Republican primary, which happens from time to time. And so those folks were functionally and effectively going unrepresented. And I'd see it when I'd show up in one of these rural communities. I ran for governor in 22, and I remember driving into this small town, and we're having a town hall at this little cafe, packed room. And to be honest with you, there were just as many people outside of the cafe as were in, and they were there to protest me. They were holding, go home Beto signs and, Greg Abbott for governor. And our MO always is, as you can tell, is like, hey, come on in. You're welcome. There's more space in the cafe. It's standing room only, but we'll all squeeze in. And they did. And I said, you can keep your signs. You can hold your Greg Abbott sign while I'm talking. And I'll give you the microphone as the first person to talk about, to ask a question. And so I gave my opening speech, and I said, hey, are you all concerned by the fact that we're about to have a voucher program in Texas? It's going to drain the meager resources we have in our public schools and send them to the big cities and the private schools. 150 counties in Texas do not have a private school that you could send your kid to if you were eligible for one of those vouchers. And I see people's heads nodding. I rode into your town today, and, man, there were potholes all over the street. How about some money here? What's your representative doing? Everybody's nodding their heads. How easy is it to get on the internet here? I know you were promised broadband access like 15 years ago. I don't think you have it, and everyone's nodding. And by the end, the Abbott signs start to come down. People are nodding their heads. They come up and shake. Thank you so much for coming to our town. And then from that, I listened and learned even more. Now, maybe I won 3 or 4 more votes in that town than I otherwise would have won, and it wasn't enough to overcome the disadvantage. But I really learned something by showing up, and that includes this. It's not enough for the top of the ticket candidate to show up every 2 years in these places, as I have been doing. You need to be able to invest in and sustain the folks like yourself who actually live there, to make sure that you have the resources to call a town hall meeting, whether or not you are in office. And then lastly, and if there's anybody who's an official with the Virginia Democratic Party, please get on this. We need to recruit you to run for office and hold a position of public trust, because you're exactly what we're looking for right now. So thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for coming. This is a great event. I still think one of the biggest injustices recently was you losing to Ted Cruz. The absolute worst. So that being said, I do have a question for you, and probably for the National Democratic Party in general. Is there room for moderation in this conversation you're talking about? Because I think one thing you did very well that you've talked about is considering all sides of an issue. And I'll use a controversial hot potato, for example, is there room for a pro-life Democrat, for example? Granted, I know Republicans who claim to be pro-life don't really mean it. They have something else in mind. But is there room for a pro-life Democrat, someone who truly, genuinely, wholeheartedly believes that something like abortion is something that the right should be there, but we should grieve that this is a reality for some people, but offer that as an option. So someone like John Bell Edwards, who might run for the Senate in Louisiana, would someone like that have your support? Would you encourage the Democrats to push someone like that, to encourage building that bigger tent that includes more people beyond the niche groups that we tend to reach that prevent us from reaching the entire country when that is an option?
Thank you for this question. Especially because of the threats that we face, that we began with and we enumerated. The very fact that this country, as we know it, any hope we have of becoming a democracy, is on the line. And the question is called, and it will be decided right now. I believe we need the broadest possible coalition, a true united front that is focused on the gravest, most important threats, and also the greatest opportunities unmet by our fellow Americans. And so my answer to you is yes, there is room. People of good conscience and good faith can have a disagreement about where life begins. And we should be able to honor those who may disagree with us on that issue, but agree with us on these other important priorities. And we should also be willing to have the conversation. I was raised Catholic by an ardently Catholic mother. And on this issue of reproductive health and reproductive justice and abortion and being pro-life or pro-choice, we had so many powerful conversations. I learned so much from listening to her. I'm pro-choice, and she would probably consider her pro-life. And one of the greatest breakthroughs I had was we were talking about Texas in particular. And I said, hey, Mom, do you realize that when we shut down all these Planned Parenthood clinics, not only are we denying women access to a safe legal abortion in the state of Texas, but in the least insured state in the union, try getting a cervical cancer screening or kind of any family planning help at all, or just the ability to see a doctor who might well save your life. And Texas right now is at the epicenter of this maternal mortality crisis. It's 10 times worse for black women in the state of Texas. And all these things are connected. And just that kind of broke through, because when we're talking about life, let's talk about life. Let's talk about the life of the mother as well. Let's talk about the life of the child. Let's talk about the foster care system. Let's talk about K through 12 education. And so I think that we're not all so absolute in our beliefs. And I think if we could extend the metaphor to a church, we're a church that's less interested in excommunication and more interested in conversion. We want to bring people, and I think by listening and not judging and not canceling, we have a much better shot of getting that done. Thank you for asking the question. Appreciate that.
All right, this is Priscilla from the Overflow Room. She's
Priscilla.
joining us.
Hi. My name's Priscilla Thompson, and I am the founder of Listen Out Loud Media.
All right.
And I've actually done an event with Reverend Hunter Somewhere High about, and we use documentary films and public speakers with lived experience to bring conversations about national issues to communities and classrooms across the country. And I am wondering, we've seen a huge change. 5 years ago, we were able to use a film called College Behind Bars to change the national landscape for incarcerated learners. And now we are really struggling to get inside schools and community events such as this. So I'm wondering, as a person who understands the power of grassroots narrative, how can we use that to really affect policy change and reach people in all these different diverse parts of the country right now? And how can people like us who use storytellers work with policymakers and legislators to make sure we are really reaching all communities across the country?
You know what, the work that you're doing is so important. And just as an example, I don't know if you're familiar with the documentary film 13th, about the 13th Amendment. I had no idea. I think that was made by Ava DuVernay. And it's about how the 13th Amendment was used essentially to prolong slavery by another name after the end of the Civil War. Slavery was prohibited except in cases where you're incarcerated and you could be essentially loaned out to be labor for corporations or companies or businesses. And I didn't know about that at all, and I didn't understand its connection to the modern prison industrial complex. You all may or may not know this, but if you do, it's a point that bears repeating. This country imprisons more of its own people than any other country on the planet. Say what you will about Iran or North Korea or Russia or China, we put more of our own behind bars than anyone else. And my home state of Texas puts more of its own people behind bars than any of the other 49. I didn't understand where that came from. And understanding where it comes from, renews my passion to do something about it, and also includes the seeds to the answer to end this ultimately, right? To make sure that there's really justice in our community. So I'm just testifying to the power of the work that you're doing and what a breakthrough it was for me to have my eyes opened in that way. I'm guessing that you're also looking at other media and formats like TikTok or Instagram. I have an 18-year-old and a 17-year-old and a 14-year-old. You try showing them a 90-minute documentary. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. So if Ava DuVernay or you can get that down to 90 seconds, which you may or may not be able to do, but I think that's really our challenge. I mentioned Stephen Colbert, and it's really not a laughing matter. I mean, one, you have Paramount that has a merger before the Trump administration right now, which owns CBS. Stephen Colbert, who's on CBS, is an ardent critic of the Trump administration. There are no accidents in this world. And it is also one of the last places that youngish people get their news. They're not watching broadcast news. They're not subscribing to the El Paso Morning Times. They're not watching cable news either. They're doing this through entertainment, through TikTok, through Instagram. So we've got to meet them where they are, and it is not going to be easy. One of these bright, young Texas legislators who are trying to fight this mid-decade redistricting that's taking place right now. His name's James Tallarico in Texas. All right, I like that you all know who he is. He was just on the Joe Rogan podcast. And kind of getting back to the gentleman's question right there about, is the tent big enough for us to talk to and listen to folks that we don't agree with all the time? I think it was brilliant for him to go on there and explain in terms that Joe Rogan's audience is now going to understand just what the threat to our democracy and our freedom is right now in the state of Texas. So I want to make sure that we stay in touch. If there's a way that we can amplify what you're doing through our channels, I think we all got to have each other's backs at this moment. If there's another way that you can suggest that we help break through and get to people, we're living, as somebody in the Philly town hall said last night, in a post-truth world. And these young people that I'm registering on college campuses, one of the persistent questions I get from them is, hey, Beto, how do you know what's real? And that one blew my mind the first time I was asked it, but they don't know. They can be forgiven for wondering. 100% of their news comes in from TikTok right now. So let's meet them where they are. Thank you for asking. Appreciate it.
My name is Camille. I'm from Midlothian, Virginia. I'm here with my mom from the Texas Panhandle, from Memphis. I'm a recent college graduate, and you talk very idealistically about action and mobilizing the people and getting people out there. But we were standing in line, and my mom was speaking to someone saying that she was, I have to get a burner phone. I have to wear masks. I don't want to bring my phone to these protests. I want to go to these protests, but it's hard to get to. I have to walk 2 miles from parking. And I really like your ideas, but they seem difficult to implement given the lived realities of a lot of people who might have worked really hard to get here and driven quite far to make it today. And my mom and I are obviously the least vulnerable people in this situation and going to these protests as white people. And of course, there's been the fear-mongering and, so much going on, masked people and people tracking our phones. There's a lot of information out there, and we don't know what's real. So my question for you is, how do we make action and mobility accessible, especially with those with low resources and low time, against a regime that is actively trying to make it inaccessible?
Thank you, Camille. That was great. Wonderful question. A few thoughts, and then I'm very interested in yours too. If I don't meet the bar of the question, part of the reason I gave that brief history lesson at the end was just to remind us of what our foremothers and forefathers did to bring us to where we are today. Literally giving their lives again and again by the hundreds of thousands cumulatively. Those in the civil rights and voting rights movement. Some of you may know the name, you probably know it, but Septima Clark, who ran these citizenship schools throughout the Deep South in the 1950s and the 1960s. This is a time where if you wanted to register to vote in Mississippi or Alabama, they would ask you to recite part of the state constitution or to pass a literacy test or maybe guess how many jelly beans are in the jar before you could get on to the rolls. And at the cost of, at the risk of her own life and the lives of those that she was educating to pass the literacy test, to recite the Mississippi State Constitution, to handle all the questions they'd get from the registrar, she did this nonetheless. And she built a network throughout the South, perhaps including Virginia, I don't know, but Alabama and Georgia and Mississippi for sure. And I'm not asking you, and I'm not asking any of us to do what she did, to literally risk her life. But I do think we have to do more than what we have been doing so far. And so I want to be clear that everything Camille just said is true. It is not like protesting is a free pass today. The alligator Alcatraz that they're building in Florida, that big, beautiful bill that had the huge $1 trillion payoff for the wealthiest, it also included an unprecedented astronomical increase in ICE and DHS funding to build new detention centers. Pay attention. Crossings at our border are at an all-time low, perhaps lower than they have ever been in the history of the United States of America. We already have extraordinary capacity to detain people. The two things do not add up unless you are intending to detain people who are not crossing the border or who never crossed the border in the first place. President Trump let slip in the Oval Office that he's going to come after the homegrown next. So those goons masked, plain clothes, without badges or warrants, who are sweeping people off the streets right now. It is very possible, to Camille's point, that if you go and protest, and if you're seen as vulnerable or an enemy of the state, that they will sweep you up as well without due process. The Supreme Court has already given this guy a pass on due process. No ability to defend yourself or to clear your name or to even know what you have been charged with. So this is not without risk. But I think if ever there were a time for each of us who are willing and who can, to Camille's point, to take those risks, it is right now. And those who take the risks and pay the price for them, we have to have their backs. We have to bail them out if bail is still a possibility, right? We have to pay for their defense lawyers if they can still get a hearing. And for those who don't have the access, either through mobility or income or the location that they're in right now, we also have to go to them. And so one of the things I really believe in, Camille, is in addition to having meetings like these where we ask people to come together, for which I'm so grateful, we also have to go out to the people who might not have heard of this meeting in the first place, might not have had a car to be able to drive here, maybe working one of those minimum wage jobs that doesn't afford them the luxury of spending part of their Saturday fighting for their country, and to enlist them by registering to vote or reminding them of what is possible or inviting them to one of these protests. But by whatever means necessary, we have to fight for our country right now, or we will most certainly lose it. Camille, I'm going to give you the microphone, so whatever I missed, I want you to add, okay?
Right. Again, I still, I think this is great, but I still think it's highly idealistic. So I would like some ideas of, concrete steps that my neighbor who might have mobility issues or might be losing faith, what is something that I could tell someone who maybe doesn't have the time or the money or is afraid? What is something that I can say, oh, you can go do this, that's accessible to them?
Do we have somebody from Common Ground?
Yes, they're over there in the back.
Okay, Common Ground. Camille, this is Common Ground. Would you mind just telling us briefly if someone here or who is not here, to Camille's point, who couldn't be here, who has mobility issues, who wants to participate in some way, how can they get involved?
Well, number one, Henrico County, where we are right now, is home to the largest percentage of registered black voters in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Way to go.
Yes. However, looking around this room, folks are missing. Right. So what we really do at Center for Common Ground, we turn out the black vote, especially people who have given up and stopped voting. Those are the people we reach out to first. So we are going to have to go into those scary neighborhoods where people don't look like us. When I learned to organize, and Cesar Chavez was my teacher. I'm over 70, so yeah, I knew Cesar Chavez. One of the things he told us was, if you are not uncomfortable, you are not reaching out. All right? So we need to be willing to get uncomfortable. We need to be willing to ask people, number one, is their registration up to date? Because if we don't stay up to date, we will miss people who haven't voted in a while. Their registration is not up to date. They may not be registered anymore. We must learn how to do restoration of voting rights. In Virginia, we are one of 3 states where if you are found guilty of a felony, you lose your right to vote for a lifetime. So we really need the right governor in Virginia and the right General Assembly, because we have to pass that constitutional amendment. So we passed it last year. We've got to pass it again in this session. And then when it comes out to us, the people, we've got to sign it so that we end our system of crime, punishment, and punishment forever. And one last thing I'm going to say about restoration of voting rights. We all know that the reason it was written into the Virginia Constitution in 1902 was they were very concerned about the advent of black people who started to vote. So they made anyone with a felony would lose their right to vote for a lifetime. And the reason Senator Carter Glass of Glass-Steagall said we're doing this is we must mitigate the influence of the darky vote. And we're still doing it. It's 2025. It passed in 1902, and we have not fixed it. All right? So we got work, even in Virginia.
Yeah.
All right? We
Thank
got
you,
work.
and thanks for partnering with us on this today and for being here and for everything that you said. And one last thing, as Cynthia brings up the next person to speak, we have a group called Powered by People, and we do in-person voter registration in Texas in a place that makes it very hard to register people to vote. And we stay in touch with those folks that we registered on a personal basis. So Texas makes it harder than any other place to vote. So we don't just register you and say good luck. We register you and stay in touch. If you're at home and if you cannot get out, but you still have access to a cell phone, we can ask you to text those people and remind them when early voting starts, to remind them the form of voter ID that they will need, to check up on them to see if their voter registration card has come in the mail. So if you are unable to leave your home or have difficulty being out there in person, we have a job for you as well. So there is a way to plug in one way or the other. Thank you for your question, and thank you for that great answer.
All right, we have lots of hands up. I promise I see you. I see you. I'm doing my best to get around the room, and so I'll ask everybody keep it quick so we can get to more questions.
She's talking to me.
Hi, thank you for coming today. My name is Savannah Morris, and I'm the president of VCU Young Dems.
Right on.
Thank you. My question today is, I am around people that organize for the youth. We provide opportunities, phone banking, knocking on doors for the candidates and for other issues. But at the same time, though, I'm not seeing the youth come out. We're providing the opportunities, we're saying what needs to be said, but at the same time, though, where is everybody? And I can't really say about the polls, I'm not really up to date with that, how it went with the primaries, but what are we doing wrong? What is the youth doing wrong that we can fix? Because now is the time, yesterday was the time, but what should we be doing?
Thank you for being part of the answer and for leading where you are right now at VCU. I mean, that's the start, right? I'll tell you a story to give you kind of the positive. I don't think anybody who is young is doing anything wrong right now. I think it's actually the system that I was describing earlier that is so badly broken. You know, somebody mentioned that I had run against Ted Cruz. And, you know, sorry about that, folks. I mean, really, every single day I'm sorry about that one. So, you know, the conventional political wisdom was you go and you meet with people who have already voted because they're a proven quantity. You do not risk precious time and resources on people who might vote, who in fact are probably unregistered to begin with, especially in a state that makes it so hard to get on the rolls. And we thought about that, and we said, you know, there's a real logic to that. I get it. I understand why people have been doing that. But maybe young people in Texas aren't voting because no one has shown up and give them a reason to vote in the first place. No one's listening to them. No one's talking with them. No one's following their lead. And so we went to every college campus in the state of Texas. We went to so many senior high school campuses and classrooms. I remember being with Chris and Cynthia in Roscoe, Texas, home of the Plowboys and the Plowgirls, and meeting with the senior high school class there and learning so much. Well, I'll tell you what happened at the end of the day. We didn't defeat Ted Cruz. We got close. We generated more votes than had ever been cast in an election in Texas. We helped 12 insurgent Democrats defeat 12 incumbent Republicans in the state house. We helped flip 2 congressional seats in a year that we were not supposed to be able to do it. And in Harris County, home to Houston, Texas, the most diverse city in the country, 17 black women won election to judicial positions there. And the kicker is, this was led by young people. Check this out. Young voter turnout, 18 to 29-year-olds, was up 513% from the previous midterm election. So it turns out if we show up and we listen to and learn with and work right alongside one another, we have a chance to get this done. We spent the day before with the Young Democrats of America who are convening, some of your colleagues, I think we met them from Virginia, who are convening in Philadelphia right now. I mean, they have the spirit, they have the energy, they have the fight, they have everything that we need in this moment. They just need the baton, and I really mean it. I mean, I think we have to, us old folks, I'm 52 years old, us old folks, I think, have to really look at the generation coming up behind us. You know, we want to thank Chuck Schumer for his service. He's done a great job. Thank you, Mr. Dear Leader, but maybe it's time to get out of the way. And we want to shine a light. We want to shine a light on people like you, on people like Zoran Mamdani, who is showing us what an exciting, energetic campaign can look like. You want to see young people vote? Put young people in front of them. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
There we go.
Good afternoon, Mr. O'Rourke. My name is Francis Stevens. I'm a police officer, and I work for the state of Virginia. My question is, just to piggyback off of her question, look around this room, and what do you see?
I was going to say beautiful people, and you guys said something else.
Well, I was going to say you'll see that the age range here is between 30 and 40, right?
Yes. For everyone watching back home, that's exactly what's happening.
Anyways, like she said, what do we need to do to attract more young adults, college students, high school students? I know Trump did very well this past election, attracting those voting groups. What can we do? What's the message we need to convey to these people that this is the party that cares about you? We care about your health care, the economy, civil rights, immigration. How do we message that so they can really be passionate about it?
Yeah.
And another thing, I'm going to make this quick. I'd like to see our elected officials, Democratic elected officials, to be more vocal in Congress. We need to tell the Republicans and call them for their lies and bullshit that they always convey on a daily basis. I got excited. I was watching YouTube. I got excited when I saw our Senator, Tim Kaine, going up against Senator Mark Wayne, I believe, from Oklahoma. Mark Wayne. Mullins, Mr. Mullins. Anyways, I got excited seeing that, and I said, we need more of this so that the people can see what we're doing and what we're fighting for.
So first of all, thank you for your service, your public service to the Commonwealth, for being here today, for the excellent question, for your comments, and also for your suggestions, your ideas, that you want to see Democrats fight. You know, I mentioned we don't want to submit, we don't want to roll over. We're seeing way too much of that right now. And in other times, you know, if the very future of this country was not at stake, we'd understand. I mean, there's not a person here who doesn't believe in bipartisanship or who doesn't recognize that at times you need to reach consensus or maybe even compromise to be able to move forward. This is not one of those times. I mean, these folks on the other side, I mean, this is the way I think about it. You all tell me if I'm wrong. I think Democrats very often care more about being right than they care about being in power. I think Republicans, and especially the MAGA movement, cares about being in power, period. They don't care about what is right. They don't care about what is wrong. They will use every lever at their disposal, and they're doing it right in front of our eyes right now. And we're like, let me look at the rules, chapter 7, verse 32. No, we can't do that. We've got to throw that rule book out the window right now and fight back. And so I'll give you all an example of a fight that we can all join starting day after tomorrow. Because President Trump's majority in the House of Representatives is so precarious, he only has but a few votes of a majority, so a few votes that he can lose on any given issue. And because his immigration policy, which is the thing that he arguably won on in terms of policy, is polling at 36%, that big, beautiful bill is deeply unpopular because people are waking up to what it's doing. The Medicaid cuts, the fact that Social Security is on the cutting block. He knows he's going to lose the 2026 midterms unless he can rig this election. So he sent the order to Texas, to Governor Abbott, and to the Republican majority in the state legislature. He said, I need 3 or 4 more congressional seats. So they are convening on Monday in an emergency special session in the Capitol in Austin, Texas, to begin to redraw mid-decade the congressional boundaries in the state of Texas to move Democratic voters out of competitive districts and move Republican voters in to disenfranchise people who have already been disenfranchised again and again and again. It is a raw, brute display of power and force, but we are not without the ability to respond. A couple of things. One, if those Democratic members of the state legislature leave the state and deny the majority a quorum, they will not be able to conduct this business. Now, there's a very real possibility that in the coming days, maybe not on Monday, but at some point, they will leave Texas and go somewhere else. God literally only knows where. They will do so each at a fine of $500 personally. They cannot pay this through their campaign account to them every single day they are absent from that session. It's a 30-day session. If that session closes without any progress, the governor can call another 30-day session and another 30-day session. If we hold out until we get past the deadline, after which they can no longer redraw these boundaries in time for the 2026 election, we will have won. So those Democrats, if they do this, they're going to need our support financially. They're going to need our support morally. They're going to need us to speak up and fight on their behalf. And that's not all. There are some Democrats who control the levers of power in other states. What if Gavin Newsom and the Democrats in California decided they were going to redraw their congressional boundaries? You may be saying, because you still have the old Democrat locked in your head, well, Beto, that's not right. That's not fair. Fuck what's right and fuck what's fair at this point right now. We gotta win power back. We gotta win power back. All right. Let's make sure that they hear us. Thank you for your question.
All right, we have time for 3 more questions.
Okay.
Hi, thank you for being here, and thank you for continuing to speak about Citizens United. I think one of the things that when Republicans hear us talk about the 1% and wealth moving from the middle class to the upper class, they think we all want to be Robin Hood and steal from the rich, and we're going to give it all to the poor people. And they don't. The Democrats have done a really poor job, horrible job of educating the masses about the top marginal tax rates, the history of it in the United States, that Walt Disney made his empire while paying 90% plus in top marginal tax rates. That's when we had upward mobility. That's when corporations, it behooved them to pay good salaries. It behooved them to have a pension plan because money that they put back into their company wasn't taxed. And we just, I think if the Republicans all really understood that and knew that that's when America had upward mobility, that make America great again, although it never really was great all across the board, obviously, for everybody, but the time when there were a possibility of moving up, that was because we had that top marginal tax rate.
Great point. And listen, now is the time for us to be making this argument in this case, because we are in the wake of that big, beautiful bill. I'm using their terminology, right? That is going to devastate our fellow Americans. And the reason we need to wake up our fellow Americans, the worst of it, by design, is not going to hit until after the midterm elections. They delayed the cuts to Medicaid so that you or your neighbors do not feel this pain until they've already, in their wildest dreams, skated through back in to political power. So, we were asked earlier about what can we do? For those who can, if there's a protest, you absolutely need to join it. If there is not a protest, you need to organize one and ask your friends and family members and neighbors to join it. Whether or not you think this is going to break through, let me just tell you, it is. It is changing public perception right now about what is happening in this country. And that is what Lincoln, no smaller authority, no greater authority than Lincoln said was the most powerful force in America. He said you have the presidency, you have the courts, you have the legislatures. But public sentiment, he said, is everything. With it, nothing can fail. Without it, nothing can succeed. If we continue to push out the truth, like you just said, if you want to look at when America was great, when you could have just one income and it was enough to buy a home, to go on vacation with your kids, to provide with your family, it was when the richest and the most powerful and the corporations were paying their fair share. We don't begrudge them their success. We don't want to vilify them. We just want them to do their part because we sure as hell are doing ours. So let's get out there and share that message. Appreciate you being here.
To your left. Left.
Got you.
Beto, hi.
One of our public servants. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. So I'm Jessica Schneider. I'm an elected official in Chesterfield County. I'm the most progressive thing Chesterfield County's ever seen. And in 2023, I won the Democratic majority on our county board for the first time ever, despite the fact that now, in a year and a half in, we haven't really done a lot because the other two Dems are what I like to call dinos. And they're too eager to be
Shots fired.
I'm sorry. They're not here, so... I'm in this place right now where I'm just about to say, well, like you just said, fuck it. I'm going to do what I want to do, and I have been. I've been working on priorities, affordable housing, workforce housing, a domestic violence shelter that we don't have for a community that's 400,000 people in a county, and we have no domestic violence shelter. As a survivor, I take that as an offense. And so I'm in the place right now where I have to get 2 other votes to get anything done. And so I'm in I walk a tight line of, I do what I need to do. Do you have any advice how to get things done? I know that people know that I'm here for them because I'm out all the time. There are people here that know that, and I just was at the Latino Farmers Market this morning, and I had 4 people come up to me and say, thank you so much for speaking at the courthouse about all the immigrants that are being taken. And I feel too much. I'm an empath. And so what can I do to make the most impact?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for what you're doing already. And I love that you are passionate and that you're emotional and that you're empathetic and that you feel all this stuff. I think we need more of that in the country right now. Just what you said about these roundups and these sweeps. Can you imagine if we survive this, generations from now, what our great-great-grandkids will be reading about in the year 2025? I hope, because it will not be the norm, that they will not be able to believe their eyes. This really happened in America. After all of the progress and all of the years and all the fights and all the victories, it came down to this. There was a guy running for president in 2024 who promised that on day one he would be a dictator, who described immigrants as poisoning the blood of America. And those crazy fuckers elected him to be president of the United States. And then when he was president and he started to dismantle this country piece by piece, right and protection by right and protection. What did they do? And all of us are going to have to account for that, right? If you're like me, my kids are my conscience. And I fear their judgment. At some point or other, they're going to say, hey, Dad, what were you doing while all this was going on? And then, this is part of that, right? We're going to bring people together. We're going to direct people to the action they can take, and we're going to overcome this. I think you have that same challenge where you are right now. And so my only offer is any capacity you have to bring people together, regardless of political affiliation or any other difference by which they would otherwise try to divide us. Let us do that right now. Share the truth of what you're working on. Ask these people, which you're probably uncomfortable with, but ask these people for their support. Say, hey, I need you to show up at this next meeting. I need you to have my back. I need these other commissioners to know what's important to all of us. This is a time to come together, and we will not be organizing online. We will not be doing this through Twitter or TikTok or IG. Yes, we've got to be on those platforms. We've got to talk and listen to people where they're at. But this requires coming together in person, just like we're doing here today. So we want to stay in touch with you and find out how we can be helpful. Thank you for being here today and for the work that you're doing. Appreciate it.
All right. To your right. To your right. Right.
Got
okay.
you.
So sorry if I didn't get to your question. This is going to be our last one.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. And I just wanted to first say thank you for presenting a vision for the future that's based not just in like good vibes, but also in like substantive policy action. It's so refreshing to hear a Democratic politician do that.
Thank you.
My question today is sort of centered around coalition building. So in the wake of the election, I've seen a lot of sort of soul searching and looking for what the answer to the problem posed might be. And I've seen a concerning number of people turn to sort of ceding ground for the sake of trying to build a broader tent. But within that, you know, while building a bigger tent is important, I've seen a lot of people start to use language that sort of shifts the Overton window to the right. You know, ceding ground on things like trans rights, on homelessness, even like the corporate issues, wanting to attack billionaire corporations and whatnot. How do you see a path forward for the Democratic Party to build a bigger coalition that is, you know, founded in principle and policy without leaving behind some of our most marginalized and vulnerable groups?
Yeah, what a great question. Yeah, it's really weird for people when, you know, present company excluded, but when Democrats say, hey, I'm all about making sure that we protect the immigrant. We were all about it as a party in 2017 and 2018. Remember the family separation policy? You traveled those 2,000 miles, most of it on foot, with your baby girl to protect her from possible death in your home country. And just as you reached the front door of America at the U.S.-Mexico border, that kid for whom you are going to sacrifice your life is torn from your arms, placed in foster care. You are deported back to Honduras. And literally, in some cases, God only knows where that child is today. There are still families who have not been reunited. Democrats were going to the mat on that issue. And then when the conventional wisdom was that the 2024 election was decided on the issue of immigration, it became unpopular and a third rail in this country. You can't get a peep out of most Democrats on this fundamental issue. And it's not about party politics. These are the humans with whom we live in our communities in every single state and commonwealth in the union, right? And we are a country of immigrants and asylum seekers from the world over. But for America, my family would have perished in the 19th century in the potato famine in Ireland. We found the one place that would take us in, and it was America. That's our story generation after generation, over and over and over again. Where are the Democrats today? Where are the Democrats today on trans issues? You know, I talked about how this focus on who's going to come into your kid's bathroom or who's playing volleyball against your daughter somehow, with everything going on in the world, became the number one issue in America. That's the greatest threat that we have to protect against. Donald Trump won that issue, and where are Democrats right now? I made the case that they're trying to divide us and distract us on this issue. But it doesn't mean that you stop standing up for the people that you care about who are literally among the most vulnerable in our communities right now, right? So, you know, back to the rhyming of history. You all know this poem. You know, first they came for the communists. I wasn't a communist, so I didn't say anything. Then they came for the trade unions, and I wasn't a trade union member, so I didn't say anything. They came for the Jews next, but I'm not a Jew, so I didn't say anything. When they came for me, there was no one left to say a word. That's how they do this. You know, when they were rounding up these so-called gang members and terrorists and thugs without due process and deporting them to that prison, the largest on the planet, in El Salvador. You know, President Trump said, look at these guys. They have tattoos on their throats. They're killing people. They're murderers. Who was going to be brave enough to stand with them? That was by design. He picked what was going to be the hardest person for you to identify with, and he went after them. And then next they're going to go after someone who came over this border and was undocumented originally, but was paroled into this country by Joseph Biden. He's going after those folks literally by the hundreds of thousands. Who's going to be willing to stand with them? Maybe no Democrats will, because we lost on that issue in 2024. So why would we stand with them right now? Next, they're coming for the U.S. citizen, American-born children of immigrants who, through his executive order issued on the first day in office, he was going to deny the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, which was ratified in 1868. It has been the law of the land that long. But who do you see standing up for those migrants today? You know, soon enough, I promise you, they are going to come for you. And if we do not stand together now, we will hang alone at some point. So this is our warning. You know, history has been very clear about the road we're on and where it will leave us. So we've got to stand up right now, and we've got to do this together, and we've got to fight right alongside every single one of us. No one is dispensable. No one is inconvenient. Everyone is important. Everyone matters, and we will fight together, and ultimately we will win. Thank you for your question. Thank you all. Thanks for coming out here today. Very, very grateful to you. Gracias.
Folks, somebody dropped, oh, can you hand that to her?